Welcome back to Outsiders. I'm James Morrow, and here with me today is honorary outsider Chris Smith, as well as special guest, the delightful Prue McSween, all with us through the entire program. Now, viewers watching at home know that this week was the week that the establishment struck back. In Washington, the word on everyone's lips is impeachment, and Democrats are having a red-hot go at Donald Trump for a conversation he had with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The problem? Well, Democrats say that the president betrayed his country by discussing with Zelensky a corruption investigation that could well ensnare Joe Biden's son, Hunter. Only it's looking like the Democrats, desperate to land a killer blow against Trump, may wind up hurting them only themselves with what is looking increasingly to be a political setup job. Note, for example, that the so-called whistleblower in this case, who is said to be a CIA agent who worked at the White House, never actually heard the call between Trump and Zelensky that he referred to investigators. His complaint is said also to be heavily footnoted, almost as if he had professional legal help putting it together. And what makes it all the more interesting is that the website of the guidelines of the Inspector General who took the complaint was updated just 2 days prior to the announcement breaking to make it clear that secondhand reports, such as one from this whistleblower, could be valid rather than just first-hand reports. Curious, I think. But in any case, mark my words, impeachment, far from nailing Donald Trump, will be a disaster for the Democrats. Why? Because it will allow Donald Trump, if he resists the urge to go a tweet too far, to do something almost unheard of in American presidential history. That is, run as an outsider against the establishment when he already holds the Oval Office. Now, already we are seeing signs that Democrat voters, remembering their history perhaps better than their party's establishment, are nervous about this tactic. They know it will force Democrats to defend Hunter Biden and the very sorts of nepotistic, cronyist arrangements that allowed someone like the vice president's son, a man with no experience in the oil and gas industry and no knowledge of Ukraine, to sit on the board of an energy company with a massive stake in the country to provide his expertise, such as it is, to the tune of several $100,000 a year while his father was vice president. You can only imagine the outrage if it was one of Donald Trump's sons who was involved rather than Joe Biden's. And this is where, if investigations continue, may be where the real quid pro quo is. And it's why Joe Biden has thus far stayed stum on the whole affair. But if we're speaking of quid pro quos, here's a pretty good example of one. It's Joe Biden bragging just last year how, as vice president, he threatened to withhold aid from Ukraine unless the same prosecutor Trump and Zelensky were discussing, the one investigating Biden's son, was shown the door. Have a listen to this.
And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired.
Joe Biden, what a tough guy, hey? Anyway, the possibilities for how this spins out are endless. And it is also worth noting that there is one big beneficiary in this controversy, should she choose to play her hand. Not rising star Elizabeth Warren, but yes, Hillary Clinton. Now, I've long said there's every possibility the former Secretary of State and failed 2016 candidate would reanimate herself come 2020. And now, with Joe Biden compromised by the Democrats' rush to impeachment, and with Wall Street warning that should Elizabeth Warren win the nomination, she would get not so much as a dime from their very deep pockets, well, that leaves an opening. And as it happens, Mrs. Clinton is this weekend doing the rounds of the Sunday shows in America. And she's ramping up her speaking, too, getting a standing ovation Friday at the Progressive National Abortion Rights Action League. Will she run? Or perhaps succumb to the urgings of some draft Hillary movement that just happens to be registered to a Chappaqua P.O. box? Well, we'll see. But she and the Democrats should be careful, because as Hillary Clinton would know from when Republicans tried to take down her husband, attempts to impeach a commander-in-chief for political reasons are less likely to kill off a presidency as they are to make it stronger. Chris, what do you reckon?
Well, you've just encapsulated it beautifully. And in the argument about whether there is any evidence at all to impeach President Trump, you've got to go back to the tape that you played. What Biden was doing was as rich and as hot as anything we have heard. Now, forget about the whistleblower. The whistleblower comes from a second-hand place in this entire case. Second-hand in terms of the telephone call, second-hand in terms of the so-called cover-up. He wasn't even involved in the cover-up. So it's so second-hand, it does not cross the line in terms of any decent prosecution. So forget him. You go back, though, and look at whether there's a connection between him saying, will you do something about the Biden family, in particular Joe Biden, and then you try and connect that to the holding of aid. Well, hold on. I think it's more compelling what we heard from Joe Biden as opposed to the disconnection between those two lines of argument from Donald Trump in that telephone call.
Of course, but also it's interesting you bring up Hillary and maybe contemplating a second run. I mean, she has dirt on her face as well with the funneling of funds to that British intelligence agency who was trying to get dirt on Trump in Russia. So, I mean, what's the difference? I mean, it's just, she is kidding. Plus, it would be great news for Trump if she ever put her hand up again, because he would just snow her again.
She is putting a toe in the water, though, I think.
Well, good luck to her. She won't make